Hi, I'm Steve Carlson. I'm a candidate for President 2016 from Independence 2016, which is an offshoot of the Independence Party, which has been disenfranchised by the state of Minnesota, which has suspended democracy here. And I got cut off in one of the videos by a technology glitch, which is probably a good thing because I wanted to review the DNC. This is the third video then regarding a letter to the U.S. Senate, part of the record there. I wanted to review what's happening at the DNC. This is in Philadelphia. It's Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, trying to ram her through as the nominee. This is gender boosting, which I think is a very sensitive subject. I'm not one of those who stands in the sidelines and applauds the dismantling of constitutional rights within the Democratic Party and within our elections. So I'm going to go over what those new rules are. These are delegate selection rules which apply right now. In all 50 states, your Democratic Party is coming up with these quotas to make sure that Hillary is selected as the first woman president or something like that. DNC new rules. In the delegate selection documents for the 2016 Democratic National Convention, proportional representation or gender division is required of all 50 states. They have a checklist for each of the states, the date by which they and their candidates are to do this. They include the requirements. 3, procedures providing for equal division in each state's convention delegation, meaning a gender division, men and women, I guess, in the composition of voting delegates, such that if a man wishes to vote, there are too many men, quote unquote, too many, already voting, then the voting right will be taken away from him and reserved for someone else, a woman, or I guess it's just a woman under gender division. Also, number 6, affirmative action plans and inclusion programs must be submitted by all the states in detail, including affirmative action and inclusion obligations of presidential candidates. So it actually obligates every candidate for president to submit, that's in the Democratic Party, to submit. So white men really need not apply. And I think this was the message to Martin O'Malley. He is the only white guy who was dumb enough to stick around, except for Bernie Sanders, who's a socialist, who has addressed this issue by saying, I think it's just as important that we have the first socialist president. Is another historical first. So that's how he deals with that. But for most people who are not trying to carry out a kind of a political revolution as a white male, they're not going to run for the Democratic Party presidency. And this is what has happened to the Democratic Party. And now they're trying to impose this on the United States. And we are fighting back, and we are going to take our country back. But they need to be considered. They need to go along with this draconian quota practice. It's just unconstitutional. It's an illegal affirmative action program under Supreme Court precedent. So I don't contend that the following elements of the DNC plan offend the Constitution. First, all public meetings. It seems very innocent at first. All public meetings at all levels of the Democratic Party in each state should be open, doesn't even say must be open, should be open to all members of the Democratic Party, regardless of race, sex, age, color, creed, national origin, religion, ethnic identity, sexual orientation, or whatever, gender identity, economic status, or physical disability. Hereafter, collectively referred to as status. 2, no test for membership in, nor any oaths of loyalty to the Democratic Party in any state should be required or used, which has the effect of requiring prospective or current members of the Democratic Party to coalesce in, condone, or support discrimination based on status. Now in Minnesota, there is a legal requirement to submit to the principles that are in the DFL Constitution, or you can't vote. This is a state law. This is not the DFL party law. This is the state of Minnesota passed this law. It's 202A.16, who may participate and vote. And you can't vote if you don't go along with these gender quotas. Most people don't even know this. Now, However, the DNC rules then proceed to require acquiescing to and being subject to discrimination based on status, on race and gender and other status. In Rule 6, the target of the DNC has laid out the justification. The promises of a democratically elected government and the right to vote have not always been extended equally to all Americans. Historically, certain groups of Americans have been explicitly denied the right to vote or have been subjected to discriminatory and exclusionary practices with the intended effect of denying them voting rights. Now, I don't disagree that somewhere in the universe of the United States somebody was explicitly denied, but this does not establish any kind of a record that all 50 states have to submit to this social and political engineering. All right, then it goes on. In addition, in recognition of this past history of discriminatory denial of the franchise and in order to encourage full participation by all Democrats in the delegate selection process and in all party affairs, the national and state Democratic parties shall adopt and implement affirmative action programs with specific goals and timetables, quotas for African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, and women. Women gets in there at the end. You don't see that. That's really what this is pushing Hillary Clinton, but it's also attacking the white male vote in other ways. Blame it all on the white male. Okay? This is what Democrats are doing in 2016. Do the rules required for this displace the voters, those supposedly all historically privileged? Of course, they're not all privileged, but it's a privilege to vote, and now it's being abridged, being taken away to make up for some reasons that Hillary Clinton and her people support. Wrongly, I do not support this. I support all the people having the right to vote. I do not support some kind of racial hierarchy in voting. All right, now, yes, as Minnesota shows, this is constitutionally sensitive, treading on the 15th and 19th Amendments and abridging and denying the vote. And in paragraph 3 of the same, it is clear. In the selection of each state's at-large delegation, priority of consideration, you're no longer a priority, shall be given to African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and women. If such priority of consideration is needed to fulfill the affirmative action goals outlined in the state's delegate selection plan. So if they don't put Pacific Islanders in, they're not a priority either. Such remedial action is necessary, says the Democrats, in order to overcome the effects of past discrimination. You know, in Minnesota, where's the record that women have been historically discriminated against, so they need to be given the majority of the votes right now? That is ridiculous. And yet, that is what's being done, and the media sits around and applauds. Now, use of the at-large delegation to fulfill the plan's affirmative action goals does not obviate the need for the state party to conduct outreach activities such as recruitment, education, and training. Priority of consideration shall also be given to other groups who are described elsewhere who are underrepresented in the Democratic Party affairs in order to assist in the achievement. This is malarkey. So if you're not in one of those groups and women are grandfathered in, you're not a priority in Philadelphia in 2016. This is today's Democratic Party, and the DNC in Philadelphia in 2016, filtering out whites and males and promoting non-whites and females on account of their race and gender for some historical reason. It's unconstitutional. It is discrimination. And this applies to all 50 states, whether a caucus or primary state. If a state party has adopted and implemented an approved affirmative action program, the state party shall not be subject to the challenge based solely on delegation composition or primary results. So they're even trying to mess with primaries. I don't know how somebody with a primary is going to, by quotas at some part of its election machinery, justify that they're fully including people in primaries. Primaries just are not that kind of thing. Now, Minnesota's illegal affirmative action program. The current Minnesota DFL Constitution which is substantially equivalent to the earlier versions which initiated my opposition in the 2012 election, as constituting voting rights violations. Includes 2 sections, each designed to conform with the DNC rules, but which do in fact discriminate on group status and thus offend the 19th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and also violate the First Amendment, freedom of political expression and freedom of political association. Article 3, Section 1, Outreach and Inclusion, and related bylaws require in relevant part that all DFL party officers, including Al Franken, shall, by inclusion, which means altering the composition of the voting delegates, select as delegates affirmatively such individuals when voting, so that such groups shall be represented on such delegations in reasonable proportion to their presence in the state. The following groups: young people, the elderly, women, the handicapped, and minority groups, whether by race, ethnic groups, or sexual preference. Further, the lack of these affirmative steps shall provide a basis to challenge and reject both officers and delegations in the state convention. So this is the boot on the neck. This is heavy imposition, heavy burdens on the First Amendment rights, violating the First Amendment. Again, Section 3 of the same article, entitled Equal Gender Division, provides whenever any caucus, convention, or meeting elects 2 or more of the following delegates, their alternates, and state-level presidential electors, equal division by gender shall apply, unless the election is uncontested. The requirement shall apply to the entire delegation and to individual subcaucuses. Election of delegates and alternates shall not be complete until the delegation and the individual subcaucuses are gender balanced. Now, in federal court and at the panel appointed by the Minnesota Supreme Court, I provided testimony that I had attended a precinct caucus as a proxy for a friend who is called minority under these rules, and was asked to withdraw him as a delegate because he was male. So I know very well that voters are deprived of their vote in the regional and state conventions because of their sex, and also the other status characteristics, although sex was a criteria here. The sex criteria violates the 19th Amendment. All right. Let's see, approaching the end perhaps of this letter. I'm sorry that I have to apologize for my technology here. This computer doesn't work. So this goes on. Okay. Here we go. In ex parte Yarborough. Okay. Okay. I'm going to end this video here and take this up in a 4th video. My apologies.